Welcome to today's episode of the Blueprint Podcast, where we throw out the old blueprint so we can become who we were always meant to be. I'm your host, Jason Smith, and if you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button and share the podcast with your friends on social media and tag me in it at JBirdFit. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Nathan Mansfield. He's a U.S. Special Warfare veteran, CEO, entrepreneur, leader, and creator of 33 Hours, a transformative fitness program rooted in the mind-body connection designed to help you discover your inner excellence. And welcome to the show. For those who don't know who you are, let's just dive right in and tell me all about yourself.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me on the show, brother. It's an honor to just share some time with a brother who's after the same mission of just helping men better their lives. And, we'll dive into a lot in this next, 30 to 40 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever we're here for, to just really bring value. And that's really my intention here, is that I'm going to share my story with the intention of just allowing people to step into my shoes and maybe see themselves in my shoes, to help them transform through something. And so that's what my whole life's about. As of right now, what I've stepped into over the last year to 2 years ago, really starting to do full scale now, is coaching men, running men's events and entrepreneurial coaching, teaching people how to be successful entrepreneurs. And so that's the backbone of my career and what I do now. Prior to this, I was a special warfare military veteran for 13 years, TAC-P in the Air Force. So we call in airstrikes on bad guys. Bringing the most lethal firepower to the battlefield, in which I believe is the best job in the military, better than Navy SEALs, better than all these guys that are doing cool things, because we just have the most lethality with 2 words: clear it hot, to make big transformation on the battlefield. We're highly trained, highly skilled, and so that was a big, precursor of my life till now, from the time I was 19 to the time I was 32. After 13 years of service, I got out and pursued entrepreneurship full time. But midway through my military career, about 6 years in, I became an entrepreneur as basically a side hustle to my military career. So a lot of people talk about, wanting to create a side hustle for that potential to get out of the thing that they're in. I'm just living proof that it's possible. I was able to build a multi-million-dollar business while I was in the military, working full-time, 12, 13-hour days. And so I think that a lot of what I do now is give people hope to start to live their passion and their purpose outside of the thing that's paying the bills, to eventually get into their passion and purpose full time.
Now, you're originally from Kansas, right?
Yes.
And so did you always want to be in the military? Was that something that you dreamed about as you were a kid?
It's something I thought about, but I never had the courage to do.
And so what gave you the courage to make that decision and take that step?
At about 15 years old, I started drinking alcohol with friends. I was a very lost kid as far as when I found alcohol at 15, it helped me fit in, because it kind of numbed my shyness. And so it became a crutch for me. I began drinking every weekend.
Yeah.
Got into college.
Social lubricant.
Absolutely. And so I hinged upon it. It was a requirement for me. In fact, I wouldn't even talk to girls unless I had a couple drinks in me, because I didn't have the courage to. So I was a very shy kid. Alcohol gave me a lot of courage, gave me a lot of the ability to be myself, as some people say. And luckily, I was gifted with intellect and mathematics, and I was gifted with some intelligence, luckily, because it's what got me through school while I was not really showing up to school. But when I got into college, I've kind of foresaw the problem as I was graduating high school and getting into college. And so when I was going to college, I was going to be an engineer. I loved architecture. I loved visualizing something and bringing it to life. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. But I went to college. I didn't live in the dorms. I lived in an apartment with 3 of my friends. And it quickly turned into getting blackout drunk 3 nights a week. And I realized that there's a problem. Like, I remember going to trigonometry class completely hammered at like 8 a.m., leaving, going home and going, Nathan, you got to do something. Like, cause this, you're not going to make it anywhere. You're going to end up dead. You're going to end up in jail. Like, you're going to have to do something about this. And so my childhood memory of watching Saving Private Ryan and some of these war movies that, like, I had some inspiration to want to do that potentially, but didn't have the courage, was like, well, maybe this is a calling. Maybe this is an opportunity to switch the gears, to change the pace, to do something different, to go serve, and to not be failing out of college anymore. And so quickly went to the recruiter's office, found out what he had available. I'm very I make decisions very quickly. I used to be very impulsive. Now I have control over it. So now I just say I make decisions quickly and rationally. And so I signed on the line, and within like probably 45 days, I was out here to San Antonio to boot camp.
And what made you choose the Air Force?
Well, I called my uncle, who was a retired Marine, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking at joining the Army." And he's like, he laughed at me. He's like, "Don't do that. Don't do that. You'll hate your life." And I was like, "Well, how about the Marines?" And he goes, "Don't do that either." He goes, "If you want a good life, join the Navy or the Air Force." And I said, "Okay." So I didn't really know what I was getting into. I just knew that from what he had told me, being, a lifer in the Marines, that if you're going to sign up for something and commit your life to it, just do something where you're going to be treated a little bit better. So he said the Air Force. And so that's where I went. I stepped out of the Army recruiter's office and went into the Air Force.
And once you were in, what did that progression look like for you as you were going through the entire process?
Well,
you were in for 13 years, right?
Yeah. So it's funny because recruiters are liars most of the time. And so the recruiter sold me on, like I was going to be like this CIA operative, like bugging enemy shoes and like listening to their, like, he's like, "You're going to be in this intelligence career field." And like, so he chalked up this job to be this like CIA operative type of thing. And so like, I'm like, man, this scares me, but I'm in. So I go in thinking that I'm going to be this like high level operative.
All of a sudden you're Jason Bourne.
Yeah. And so I find out quick. Well, I get to boot camp, and anyways, he had lied on my paperwork to get me the job because it's the only job that I was like actually interested in. So he lied on my paperwork. So then, when I went to go do my top secret clearance, they're like, "We actually did a records check, and you've gotten in trouble underage drinking, and you had a disorderly conduct. So you actually don't even qualify for top secret clearance." So they basically, okay, well, this is actually fraudulent enlistment because you lied on your paperwork. And I was like, "Well, I didn't lie on my paperwork. My recruiter lied on my paperwork to get me the quota, or to meet his quota to get me in the spot." So we went through this whole debacle. But anyways, they hand me a book of like all the Air Force jobs. And they're like, "Pick one." And I'm like, "I don't know what any of these things are." Like, because if you look at military MOSs and AFSCs, like how they're articulated, you're like if it's a jet engine mechanic, but it's called like they're called something completely like aerospace engineer or something. You're like, so like, I don't know what I'm signing up for. So I look at once again, relying on my intellect. Luckily, I did very well in the ASVAB. So I just went to the highest numbers that they offered and just sorted them by the top numbers. So I ended up getting a job called a contracting specialist, where I ran procurement and negotiated contracts for the Air Force, which has very marketable skills on the outside.
Absolutely does.
So I was like, well, maybe if I choose something that requires me to be smart, then at least I can carry that skill if I don't like the military. So that was my thought process. So I did that. I went to the school here in San Antonio, graduated, quickly moved to England for 2 years, where I deployed to Iraq. And then after going through my deployment in Iraq, coming home, I read Lone Survivor. And after I read Lone Survivor cover to cover in one day, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm selling myself short on what I'm doing here in the military. Like, you signed up because you wanted to go do incredible things and make a difference, but I didn't feel like I was making a difference. So I said, well, I can go be a Navy SEAL, but there was no transition programs to go from Air Force to the Navy, because that's what I wanted to do. So they were like, "Nope, you can't do that. We don't have any transition programs." So what can I do? Well, I ran across these guys who were carrying rifles and rucksacks all over Fort Bragg because I moved to North Carolina. And I was like, I wonder what those guys do. Found out they were Air Force guys. I thought they were Army guys. They're all dressed up, some days camo on their face. I'm like, is there a job like this in the Air Force? End up talking to their senior leadership. They're like, yeah, it's called TACP. We drop bombs on bad guys. We go forward with infantry, special forces, Rangers, and we bring destruction to the battlefield. And I was like, that sounds pretty cool. Found out how to switch over. So I'd spent like 2.5, 3 years as a contracting specialist. They only allowed like 2 or 3 cross-training spots for a senior airman in E4 a year out of hundreds of thousands of people in the Air Force. So there were like 3 spots. So I'm like, man, this is highly competitive. I ended up getting in with a good 06, like that was across the street, have him sign my package. He's like, I basically ran like a crazy, like an 8:15 mile and a half. And then he was a prior quarterback for the Naval Academy. So he's like, here's the one thing, I'll sign your paperwork, which will get immediately expedited to the staff, and you'll probably get picked up very quickly, but you have to pass this one task. And we're in the building, and he throws it a rocket at me with a football. He's like, if you drop this, I'm not signing your paperwork. So I catch it, signs my paperwork. Before I know it, I'm off to TACP school at Herbert Field, Florida, which was just the biggest kick in the balls of my life. So
that's awesome. That's a great story. Now, I did like what you said there, in that you were selling yourself short. And I think that's so relatable to so many people that are out there, that they have more gas in the tank and they know they have gas in the tank, but they're not showing up for themselves to the highest degree to be able to bring things to fruition.
Yep, absolutely. That's a very commonality. And it's happening within you and me. It's happening with everybody. The question is, how short are you selling yourself?
Right.
Because nobody's living up to 100% of their potential.
Huh.
You look at David Goggins. Like, Goggins is an incredible dude, incredible athlete who gives, tries harder and gives more. But he still says, at my strongest, I'm still at 40%. At my hardest, I'm still at 40%. So just imagine what the average person is. I often wrestle with my potential that I'm actually leaning into. And I think most days I'm at 20 or 30%. And I feel like I'm doing quite a bit.
And what is it that you're actually wrestling with?
I'm wrestling with how much of my gift am I stepping into and putting the gas pedal down 100% every day. I think we can only measure ourselves by the day. And our goal is to win the day and be better tomorrow than we were yesterday, right? So every day I have to go, what percentage of my potential did I tap into today when I have that reflection at night or the next day? And how can I just up that the next day to be better for people, to be a better servant, to get on more calls, to give more value? So I'm just measuring up every day of what my complete potential is.
So now you were in for 13 years, and I'm assuming you deployed. How many times did you deploy?
3.
And what were some of the key takeaways that you can share with us from those experiences that helped you as the entrepreneur that you are today?
Well, my first deployment was to Iraq. I was 19 years old. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, so I was very close to my family and friends. And so I ripped myself basically apart from them by moving to England, and then quickly to Iraq, into a war zone. I went from boozing 3 nights a week with my friends to a war zone in less than 8 months. So in that deployment in 2008 in Iraq, I learned a lot about just having courage, like stepping in. I think that I just lived so timidly, afraid of being myself, afraid of, speaking up, afraid of doing hard things. I was comfortable, complacent, lazy. I was just doing what was easy. So that deployment, I caught myself signing up for all the most dangerous things. And I was like, oh, okay, man. And so I was like, you do have courage, bro, when I thought I didn't. So that deployment taught me a lot about the courage I had inside of me, that when I tapped into it, it became like an ignition. So that was kind of the catalyst. I was 19, 20 years old during that deployment. And so that's what I learned there. And that has perpetuated my entire life since. My second deployment, Afghanistan, 2011, was the first combat experience I had been in. And so looking the enemy and death face to face after my first major gunfight, in which I'm still not sure how I walked away alive, then what I realized is I had this epiphany after that I was selling myself short, that I was undervaluing life. Like the few years that we get to make an impact, a difference, to do something that we're passionate about, to chase our dreams, I realized how complacent I had become. And so after that deployment is when I became an entrepreneur. I was like, I have this passion for fitness. And so I started my own brick and mortar supplement shop. That was in 2012. My last deployment, oh man, was 9 months of minimum security prison, essentially. I was trapped in the desert in the middle of nowhere in Kuwait for 9 months with a gym and food. So, same quality of life. And I lived in a tent with 20 dudes for 9 months. And so that deployment probably just taught me, it taught me how good we have it.
Yeah.
And how to be grateful for what you have. Because when you're locked in the tent with 20 dudes for 9 months and all you have is a gym and some hard-boiled eggs, some chicken that tastes like crap, you begin to really value the life that we have.
God, that sounds so good. Yeah, and it was probably a great opportunity to build your body, but maybe not so great for your overall mental health during that
Yeah.
by the end of that 9 months.
I got jacked that deployment. All I did was I
Yeah.
ate 12 hard-boiled eggs every morning with bacon and 2 cups of oatmeal. And then the first 4 months, me and my friends drank a gallon of milk a day.
None of that is good.
No, terrible. Terrible. but we gained like 20 pounds, you know. That was the objective. Just to get as jacked as we could because there's nothing else to do.
We go from the military into a space of, you know, becoming an entrepreneur. And while you're into fitness, what made you choose to grow and develop a supplement company with all the other supplement companies that are out there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I started my brand in 2012, and so there weren't an abundance of supplement companies back then. Like your options was basically GNC Vitamin Shop. Basically, most people went to GNC back in 2012.
Yeah.
And GNC, the reason that I started my own brand was because I hated going into GNC, and there was a 75-year-old woman that was telling me that I wanted a pre-workout and some protein, and she's like, all you need is this multivitamin. You really need this because that's what she's programmed to sell. And it pissed me off because I was like, I'm tired of going to GNC with a 75-year-old woman who knows nothing about weight training and bodybuilding, and she's trying to sell me her damn multivitamin. I don't want your multivitamin. I want something that's going to help me get in better shape. Like I want something that's going to increase my performance. And so I got so pissed off at the repetitious of cycle of like not being able to find supplements to help me grow that I was like, I'll just take it in my own hands because I'm sure I'm not the only one that's frustrated with GNC. So I'll just start my own company and I'll focus on selling all small business quality products that actually give you results. So that was the catalyst for me to start my own nutrition shop.
So now that's 2012. So I'm assuming that you had a brick and mortar shop.
Yeah.
And so what did the early stages of that look like for you building your company?
Well, I mean, starting my own business was one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned. It's probably single-handedly the biggest lessons I've ever learned in my life. Why? Well, I had no money. I was $30,000 to $40,000 in credit card debt. I managed my finances terribly. So I had no money. My military paycheck basically just paid off all my bills and my finances and hopefully had some spare change left. So what did I learn about myself through this? Well, I had to figure out, I'd never owned a business, had no entrepreneurial experience. I knew a lot about supplements. That was the good thing. But I went completely out on the ledge and put myself completely out there to start this shop. Like, I didn't know how to get a lease, but I called persistently. They weren't even going to give me a lease because I had no credibility and I was in debt. And I just called persistently until they said yes. So I got the lease. Then I got the lease, but I didn't know how to set up a shop and I didn't even know what products to carry. So what I have to do, I had to figure out, okay, we'll call this brand, look for this brand, try, test, sample. We were open within 30 days selling products. Our first month, we did 17,000 in revenue. Like I had no clue what I was doing. Went into this thing completely blind. And so this is just a problem that I see with so many people is that they hesitate. Like one thing that I've been blessed with is activism. It's one of my number one strengths on the 34 Strength Finders. And it's what I try to teach people is like, stop thinking so much because you don't know all the answers and you won't know all the answers. And if I have to come to all the conclusions and have all the certainty in the world that what I'm going to do is going to have this result, then you'll never start. Right? So this, like starting my journey as an entrepreneur in the supplement industry was such a great experience because it taught me that I just could have faith that if I just put in the work, I can figure it out.
And it's that trial by fire and being able to sit in that discomfort of the ambiguity and the uncertainty of the situation. You know you have a purpose, you know you have a goal, you know you have a desire, and you've now brought products in and you're selling these products, but there's so many other systems that you have to put in place and figure out along the way to be able to then drive and scale the business to a degree that is fruitful, acceptable, and worthwhile for your mission and your vision. And that brings me to, what is your overall mission and vision with your company?
With my nutrition company or my entrepreneurship company?
Both.
So my nutrition company is it's just to give people inspiration and the belief that they can change. But it's also like, it very much mirrors my coaching, because my coaching is to help people break the cycle of their life and begin to live the life that they were called to live. So for me, what I've looked at and analyzed over the last 15 years of my life is how unhappy people are. People live miserably. They live miserably because they're overweight. They live miserably because they hate their job. They live miserably because their marriage is terrible. Like, if you think about the average American and how miserable they are in all these different facets of life, but seemingly never do anything about it. It's interesting to me, is how could your life be so terrible and you hate all the things about your life, but you never will change? So for me, all my businesses are fundamentally a catalyst to get you to go, okay, I saw this thing, I heard this reel, I heard this, and I actually have realized that I need to switch and go the opposite direction. That what I'm doing right now, sitting in this misery, being overweight, hating my life, hating who I see when I look in the mirror, there's actually hope and inspiration to change. And I need to.
There's a certain amount of learned helplessness that people experience when they get so frustrated. They get so frustrated with where they're at. They were never taught the skills to be able to take that next step, to cross that path into uncertainty and to do something new or different, because it's very uncomfortable to be uncomfortable by trying something new. It's so much easier for me to just keep doing what I've been doing for the past 15 years, because at least I know the outcome of that. And if I do anything different, that now I don't know how to focus or think about the future and what's in store for me. And then that's going to bring on all these problems, and I don't know how to deal with these problems. And that's really scary for me. And so I think people get paralyzed just by the uncertainty of, just trying to move their life in a forward direction and create a little bit of momentum for themselves. But I think that's a good segue into 33 hours.
Yeah,
so what is 33 hours all about, and what made you create that?
Well, 33 hours it's a men's rite of passage event. And I say that because me as a man going through lots of struggles in my life, like, I've had things in my life consequently that were terrible, but many things, probably more things that I've created, problems I've created in my life that were just catastrophic. I'm not here to sit and play the victim and say my life's been pathetic or terrible because of my parents, or did I have a good childhood? Moderately, but obviously I had some trauma with that too. But I'll be just real with you, man. Like, I've caused more problems in my life than I would like to admit. So I've created this product of, like, being a broken man. And I lived that way for many years, attaching to every single thing, every tangible thing that would make me feel good. We live in a society where if it feels good, do it. Why? Because so many people are miserable because they're not aligned with their purpose, and they don't have any reason to live life at the fullest capacity, that they just attach on to anything that gives them a good feeling. Sex with multiple partners, drugs, alcohol, money, success, right? All those things are things that I chased because I was just like, man, if I could just make $1 million, man, if I could just have my dream wife, man, if I can just buy that new Mercedes, and if I just do this. And it's like, every time I went down this road, it was so empty. I finally got, because here's the thing that innately the skill I have that is so incredible, but is also such a letdown. My mom told me from the time I was like 3 years old, I'm not the kind of person you can say no to, because I'm going to do it regardless. Like, you're just better off not saying no to me, because you're just going to give me more fuel. So, where's that served me in my life? Well, everything I've wanted, I've went after and I've got. There's very few things that I haven't, because I will do whatever it takes. Like, if it's to build a $10 million company, I'll grind, I'll work, But I've gotten all these things that I wanted because I'm not lazy and I have a work ethic and I'll work my ass off. So I haven't been let down by the journey, but I've been let down by the result. So innately, what do I know about men? Is that men are hurting. Men are hurting because they don't express their feelings. They feel like they have to be this macho man. They feel like they have to, they can't have any vulnerability. And so men live very silent, hurtful lives. Men, 70% of suicides are men because men are hurting. And society is not doing us a favor by the cap and the narrative that they're putting on masculinity. So then it just makes men even feel more like shit about themselves. So what's my purpose in 33 hours? To take broken men, to show them who they truly are. Because most men don't even have a clue who they are. They're putting themselves down. They lack worthiness. I want to show the lion. I want to take the lion by his neck and put his face in the pond and show them he's not a damn sheep. Because most men inside feel like they're a sheep. But 33 hours, I get to take you and I get to show you what you're capable of based upon what you do. Because you've made it through something incredibly hard, incredibly stressful, no sleep, little food, heavy physical endurance, heavy stress. And so it's a moment in which I don't even give the change. I just be the environment for change. And the man gets to see who he truly is. And it's not the man that he showed up as. That's a part of it. But we work on crafting 3 different things in this course. We craft a man's values. Most men don't know what they stand for. They're wishy-washy. They're hanging on to some political character or movie star or someone that is preaching a narrative, and they're like, well, I like The Rock, and The Rock says COVID vaccines are good, so COVID vaccines are good. Like, most men don't have solid, foundational, firm values. And I know that the number one thing that a man needs is values in his life, for himself, for his family, and the people that he surrounds himself with. But most men will cower to the opinions or beliefs of other people, and they won't stand strong in their narrative and what they believe in. So that's the number one thing we teach. And the second thing we teach is vulnerability. We talked about men not being safe to express their feelings. Day 1, within 15 minutes of the event starting at 9 p.m., we started at 9 p.m. for a reason, when they're already tired, we had a man step up. We cracked into them so quickly, he was like, I literally almost killed myself 2 days ago, and I just wanted to make it here. So the vulnerability started out strong. And I have a whole teaching, like 2 hours of coaching that I do after like 12 to 15 hours of like hardship and physical endurance to teach vulnerability. We didn't even have to teach it. Everything just like a volcano in these men just erupted under physical duress. So we teach vulnerability. The last thing we teach is vision. Most men have no clue what they're after in life. Richard Branson, owner and founder of over $3 billion companies, when asked, how in the world have you created not just $1 billion company, but multiple, crystal clear, precise vision? When you know what you're after, your reticular activating system begins to work in your favor, begins to direct you direct your footsteps. You begin to see the things that are important to align you to where you're called to go. And so we teach vision, and we teach men how to create a vision, a compelling vision for their life, to be led by a belief in a vision and not just be walking through life aimlessly with no map, no compass, just walking, because that's most people. That's most men. They just walk. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they'll end up. And the fact is that like every day they wake up, they hate where they're at, but they still don't know where they're going. Plot yourself on the map. Plot your destination and begin to walk aggressively towards your path. And that alone will completely set a fire in a man that he's unstoppable.
It's one of those things. So many of us grew up and were shaped and molded into being people pleasers.
Yeah.
And so when you're a people pleaser, you sit in somebody else's frame, and they create a vision and a story for you. This is what you should do. This is where you should go. If you do these things, this is going to make me happy. And we're beholden to people that are above us in some way, shape, or form, or at least we see them as being above us and having control over our situation, where we're going, what we're doing, why we're doing it. The problem is when you become an adult, now you're lacking in the skill sets to be able to make those decisions for yourself and to say, well, no, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. This is how I'm going to do it. And so it's programs like yours that I think are extremely beneficial for men to, take that step into uncertainty, but be in that safe space where they can be around other people that are going to shape you. They're going to hone you. They're going to make you better. You're going to have an opportunity to express yourself in a way that you've never expressed yourself before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's deeply powerful and transformative for the people that are going through that. So I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. What does the actual program itself look like? How do people tap into it? And then you had mentioned 34 strength. Is it Strength Finders?
Yep.
What is that all about?
Okay, so we'll hit the 33 hours first. So 33 hours is it's a 33-hour long event, and which starts at 9 p.m. We max out our classes at 10 guys. We want the intimacy. It's just me and my friend who's a former Army Ranger in the battalion. He's a successful entrepreneur as a coach. Also, he runs a coaching academy, and so we take them through this transformative 33-hour gauntlet that is very physically demanding. It's very emotionally demanding, very spiritually demanding. We even found out everything just kind of comes out. But we have every hour is dedicated, has a dedicated plan and objective. Every hour throughout this thing, they don't sleep. So you think about, they sleep on Thursday night, they come in Friday night with no sleep since Thursday night, and they don't sleep again until Sunday night. So really, they're going Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They're going three. If you look at days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they're basically going 4 days without sleep, which is just really stress inoculation. I want people to see how they perform when all odds are against them, right? And we just take them through deliberate exercises of both teaching and coaching. We pull them in for an hour, 2 hours, and then we push them back out in the field. But most of the work is done under physical duress. What I'm finding is that men aren't really able to transform well through conversation. I went to a therapist for a year, and when I really reflect back on that, it was like during one of my challenging times after I'd already become a millionaire, was suicidal shortly before I was about to kill myself. And when I really look back on that year, I didn't really transform much. But men are physical specimens. We're like, God created us to be physical beings. And I believe that our therapy comes through like when we combined both like emotionally and spiritually coaching with physically demanding things, that all of a sudden, like, people's problems come out like crazy, and the weight begins to lift off their shoulders. I think that there's just an advance. I think what we found, truthfully, is an advanced therapy for men, turning 10 years of therapy into a day and a half. That's like when I really look at the results that every man got, every single man had a massive transformation. We turned decades into days. We took this long, drawn-out thing of men talking to people. Most won't even do that anyways. And we turned it into this event in which creates massive transformation in just 2 days.
And for those of you who are listening, we're not saying therapy is a bad thing. Absolutely go to therapy, do what works for you. But what we're talking about here is the suppression of the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that make up a human being, and then reaching the pinnacle of having that release through empowering yourself through 33 hours, which I think is absolutely an amazing process.
Yeah. And I think getting things out is important. That's why therapy is important. But I think really the transformation can come in the physicality. I think it expedites the process.
Well, a big part of it is a lot of men are an island. They're living their life. They're doing their things. They're kind of going through the motions. They don't have a massive support system. In 2023, they don't have the friendship groups that are, tight knit. They're not meeting on a weekly basis to have deep conversations or to try and manage certain experiences. And they end up putting that on their spouse or their partner. And that spouse or partner then feels like a parent to that man. And that's where the relationships start to tumble and fall, and they start to struggle, and it becomes more toxic and destructive. So for the guys that are listening, reaching out to other men, finding a group that works for you, whether it's through doing jujitsu or finding F3 is another program. Then we've got 33 hours here, which is a great opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you notice that when you're in your physical element, like when men really get after the gym, or you go to jujitsu and you get physical and aggressive for a minute, that you feel a lot better when you're done. And so there's something to be said about that.
Absolutely. And the thing we don't talk enough about is self-regulation and co-regulation. I talk a lot about self-regulation on my social media in terms of, well, you meditate, you do breath work, you go for walks, you can increase your walks by adding a weighted vest, and making sure that you're sitting down every day and journaling to be able to manage your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, because you don't have people to talk to. So it's a great way to see patterns in your life that are keeping you stuck by taking the time to actually write it out. And so that's the process of learning self-regulation. But with what you're doing, you're now putting people in a place to co-regulate. So now we're around other men with similar interests, similar struggles. We're having the opportunity to do things side by side with one another. We're becoming stress inoculated, which I think is absolutely wonderful, because I don't think enough people put themselves under that level of stress to be able to see who they are and how they can react. And, you rise up to meet the world through that process. And you don't recognize it because we're so busy doom scrolling on our phones and spending so much time on social media and doing other things that we're not making ourselves that much of a priority to actually rise up and meet the world where we can.
Absolutely. As far as the 34 Strengths Finder, so that's just a tool I found a couple of years ago. But what I realize is, there's all these personality tests out there, the Enneagram, and all these different things, right? But there's one truth that I know, and it's that when you align with your gifts, you become an unstoppable version of you. So like most people settle for something that they just fall into. They go to college because their dad was a CPA, and so that they become a CPA, or the dad was a real estate agent, or someone told them it would be a good idea to be a real estate agent, and they just follow this path, and they get caught into this cycle that pays the bills, and then they never escape. They never align with their gifts, their purpose, and they feel miserable their entire life. That's the story of the average American. But what I found is, like, I'm always after pursuit of the things that light me up, that I feel energized from intrinsically, that I don't have to go drink 3 Red Bulls to get excited about, right? It's like the place that I'm in right now coaching. Like I get fired up to talk to people. I get fired up to talk to you. I don't need anything. I could be on 2 hours of sleep and show up here with the same energy and do this for 16 hours. That's a clue that you're in the right place. So how do I find that? Because most people are like, well, I don't know what my gifts are. One of the tools that I use is the 34 Strength Finder test, because it'll tell you from 1 to 34 what you're good at. And it's not like what you're good at, what you're bad at. It's just ranking what you're good at from 1st to 34th. Oddly enough, most people consider me to have high levels of discipline. Discipline's like 23 for me, which explains to me why I have to work so hard to stay disciplined. Like, discipline does not come easy to me. It's like a gauntlet for me to stay disciplined.
Yeah.
But what I learned through that is some of my gifts in my top 5 is activism. It's why I've been able to start businesses quickly without having to, there's still risk mitigation and risk analysis, but I can think and move quickly. Leadership, command, which is like being able to take command of a room and to lead and to charge. What else? Ideas, creativity is one of mine. And so I'm like, okay, I started following my patterns. Okay, Nathan, you've owned businesses for 12 years. But there's been these points in these businesses in which you can I can start a business in 3 days and have it up and running, no problem. Because I can come up with the ideas. I'm not afraid to start it. I can get it going. But when I get in the business, I get very bored, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, what can I do? Well, I can help people start businesses, because I don't necessarily enjoy the monotonous drag of like running and operating a business. It's not exciting to me. But starting businesses is very exciting to me. And so this is actually what led me to coaching, was the 34 Strength Finder, because it aligned me. So then when I started thinking about this is the question, like, I'll get on like discovery calls with people, and they'll be like, hey, I don't even know what my gift is. I hate my job. All this. Okay, take this test. Okay, we take the test, we analyze. Okay, what are your top 5? We begin to look at that. But then what I start asking them is, where are you helping people for free that you're just giving advice constantly? People come to you. What do people come to you for advice on, right? That's an indicator. Where do you help people for free already? That's an indicator. What gets you really excited? That's an indicator. We're looking for these clues. That's how we begin to define our gift and our purpose. And then so once we align with those things and we begin to go all in, it's like this explosive reaction of intensity and drive. You look at, I explain Tony Robbins a lot because Tony Robbins was suffering from mercury poisoning, which basically robs all the ATP in your cells. So he has no energy, but he's able to get on a stage for 16 hours and carry a crowd of 25,000 people. How? Because he's living exactly where he's called to be. He doesn't need, the dude's never drank a cup of coffee in his life, right? So he has no caffeine to fuel him, even at the worst of his toxic poisoning, metal poisoning. But that's the example, is that why are we all not living like that?
Man, that's a great question. I wish I knew.
But my fire and intensity is to get people to understand that, to live like that. Because life's too short to be miserable.
No, I agree, but it's finding that purpose and then accepting that that's your purpose, because we get in this place of, well, this is who I am and this is who I've been and this is just who I'm always going to be. And we label ourselves and we get stuck. And then you're 40, 50, 60 years old going, man, I never lived in my purpose. I never did what I was supposed to do. I feel like I was capable of doing so much more. Nobody ever showed me how to bring that out of me or believed in me enough to say that I could do this. So they're looking for other people to give them permission to go and do all this stuff. And it's like, well, no, you have to give yourself the permission to go out and do all of these things. Otherwise, it's just never going to happen. And then you're that 85-year-old that's really, you're angry, you're upset, you're alone, you're isolated, and you're filled with regret for all the time that you wasted to get to 85 years old when there was always so much opportunity. And that just brings me back to, I'm 44, right? So for those of you who are over 40 and you think that your time is done because, well, it's just all downhill from here. Look, people are living to 100 years old. So you've got another potentially 50 years to continue building, developing, growing, and expanding, and becoming the type of person that you would be proud of when you are 85 years old, looking back on this stage of your life. So keep going, keep pushing, keep making it happen for yourself. Now, you help start and scale businesses to 7 figures plus. What does that look like, and how can people tap into that?
Well, I look at, for one, if people already have a business, then what I'm going to do is go in and analyze all their patterns. Our results are a consequence or a happening from our patterns. So it's very easy to look at people's lives or their businesses and just do an analysis of what they're doing and what's not working and find out where they need to go, right? A lot of people have success very early on in business, but then they get the shiny object syndrome and they start chasing, well, there's Facebook ads and there's all this, and they start chasing all these things, but there was one thing that worked really well. And if I would have doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on the thing that worked really well, I would have built a multi-million-dollar company just with that thing, just figuring out how to multiply it, right? So like, being that I've run a 7-figure business, I've did over $10 million in revenue in my apparel and supplement business. And I've had some major rises and falls. Like, it wasn't just sunshine and rainbows building to $10 million. I mean, it was like lots of failures, more failures than successes. And so just watching how I navigated that. And I've been mentored by some of the best people in the world. So I just have gained the knowledge and the intellect to be able to help people navigate and build patterns that get them to the results that they're looking for.
Now, you said you've been mentored. Who's been your mentor or your greatest mentor or greatest inspiration for doing the things that you're doing?
Ed Milet, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I saw you're part of Arete.
I was back in 2019, 2020.
And so what was your overall experience with that? As well, back at that time, you would have been much younger in the entrepreneur space. How did that help you?
I mean, my business went from 1.3 million a year to 5 million in basically a year.
And
So
was that just from the collaboration and the networking, or was it
I think it
more
was a
skill
lot
sets?
from no, I don't think it had really much to do with the networking. It had much to do with the skill sets learned and the mindset. It's just you get in the room with more successful people, you'll automatically become more successful. Like it's that, the old adage of cumulative sense of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, or you're the result of that. So, you get around big fish and you begin to think like one. That's why I tell people they need coaches that have been more successful than them, because what got you here won't get you there. Like your wisdom and your intellect can only get you to a certain point, and then there has to be a point in which you level up. And how do you level up? Well, I have to change my belief systems in order to level up. But one way to do that is to get around people who are much more successful. Like if $1 million is the most amount of money I've ever seen in my life, and then I surround myself with someone who's got like $1 million in like 50 different accounts, I'm like, wow, I'm just the little guy. And it's like you start absorbing the intelligence and the thought process of someone that's much more successful. And just through that experience, you begin to be able to grow yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you almost get to bend time in on itself, because you have the opportunity to gain all this knowledge, this experience, and to utilize that now versus had you not gotten a coach, right, and had these mentors, it would have taken you
Mm-hmm.
double, quadruple the time to be able to achieve the success that you have. So
Yep.
for those of you who have a stigma, around coaching, it's necessary. This is the opportunity to grow, expand, become different, and to get the skill sets necessary to be successful in your life. And so you really have to shift your mindset and stop seeing coaches as, they're all grifters. There are grifter coaches out there, I can tell you that. But there's also a lot of people out there that, they've actually done what they say that they've done. And
Right.
they show up for you in ways that are deeply beneficial physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So get a coach, get a mentor. It's beneficial for you. My next question is, how do you know when to double down? Because you mentioned doubling down on one thing versus when to pivot.
Well, I think that if you're in tune, for me, is in tune with God, but also in tune with yourself, you begin to understand not feelings necessarily, but there's like this intuition that you're able to tap into. I think so many people are distracted with, like you said, phones, and that they don't even know what's happening. They're just a subconscious program. The more that we move away from all the distractions, the more we can rely upon our own tuition, or for me, rely upon God to give me the answers to do that thing. Like, I don't necessarily know that I'm equipped with all the right tools specifically to say, like when I went into coaching men, I had 95% female followers on Instagram. So was that a
Right.
rational decision? Like in my feelings? No. But I kept getting the signs from God that was like, hey, go here. And I'm like, but God, I've got 220,000 followers of women followers on Instagram who I can capitalize on. There's a huge market pool for me already there. They're hot leads, right? And he's like, go coach men. And I just kept hearing this voice, but it was backed by interaction. So what I had to analyze is like, okay, I feel as if God's telling me to pivot to coach men. But then what are the facts that are reinforcing that? Well, the facts were that when I talk to dudes like you, I get fired up and I get excited and I'm passionate, but I get also this fire and intensity from helping a dude get through hard things. And so I looked for these reinforcements in my life that were saying, see how you felt when you just had that conversation? Like Sandy came into my life, who's my videographer, and we would sit at the table and strategize for 5 hours straight, and I wouldn't get tired. So I kept getting these signs that were just like, I'm looking for clues. I'm listening to God and my intuition, but then I'm looking for the clues to reinforce it. One thing I preach that I've been talking about a lot about lately is facts versus feelings. We're often led by our feelings. We're often misled by our feelings. Like the Bible tells us the heart is deceitful. If you follow your heart and what your heart tells you, that it'll lead you into wrong places. But like, I got to think about the facts. And when I went to go to the paper, I was told to pivot from supplements to coaching men. I still have my supplement company, but I'm in the process of probably selling that or doing something else with it to pivot, because I had all these reinforcing facts that told me it was the right thing to do. And that's what I look for, facts over feelings. Because if I went up my feelings, I would have never gotten to coaching. I would have stayed being a supplement company owner and only doing that and being miserable.
And I can tell you, as a coach myself, it's interesting to see the demographic, right? Because the majority of my followers are women on all platforms. It's amazing because it gave me that start. But I also have this desire. I keep everything neutral intentionally because I want to be able to serve the masses in a way that are going to be extremely helpful for the type of content that I produce, which is all attachment style related relationships, dating, overcoming your limitations. And so over time, what I've noticed is I keep getting more and more messages from men. There's been a massive increase over the past 6 months because they're acknowledging and recognizing, hey, what you just said really resonates with me in the circumstances that I've been in and all of these different relationships that I've had. I didn't realize what I was doing or what I wasn't doing or what I could be doing better or how closed off I was, or the fact that, you know, you speak on vulnerability, that I don't know how to access that part of me to then be able to connect with my partner and to have that the type of relationship that I truly desire. So it's really cool when you see that breakthrough that you have in a man, because it's like the light bulb turns back on and you can see it in their eyes. There's a shift. It just happens. They're like, whoa, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. And now they're ready to like take off and go. And I get goosebumps just talking about it, because we've all been there where there's been this deep pain, shame, embarrassment, frustration, irritation, sadness, depression, and you sit in that for so long and you don't know how to get out of it. And when you don't know how to get out of it, that's where you take that doom spiral all the way down and you get to that place of, I just want to leave the planet. And to get yourself out of that is an amazing breakthrough and experience. So for those of you who are struggling, you need to connect with somebody. You know, 33 hours, I think, is a great start to put yourself in that position to rediscover who you are.
Yeah, it's one thing I realized 2 years ago, because I had no male friends, but that was also right after I almost killed myself. And so something just spoke over me that was like, you need to find men, strong men in your life. And I realized how tough life is when I don't have brothers in my corner. And oftentimes it's my fault because I push men away from me, because I'm like, I feel as if I don't need them or I don't have time for them. And so I will sabotage male friendships and relationships because I'm so busy with life. But it's funny because when I go down that rabbit hole, I end up finding how much I need them. Like, I think if men had actually, and I'm talking about quality male relationships. I'm not talking about your beer drinking bros.
Right.
I'm talking about like, we know each other. Like, we know our deepest pains, right? When you have a connection with another man like that, that actually will save men's lives. We like men, like all men are like this. I get it. We shy away from deep connection with other men. It's like something societal that's like told us that that's not okay. But when we do it, it's transformative in our lives. We need strong male relationships, and not just for the camaraderie, but also for the accountability.
Yep.
Like, we need people to tell us when we're messed up, when we're making bad decisions, and not encourage it. You know, where I grew up with the friends I had is like, we encouraged bad behavior upon each other because it was funny. It was, you know what I mean? Like all my friends growing up encouraged me to do dumb things. And I got,
and it's easy to get into, but difficult to get out of.
Yeah. But like when a guy calls you out because he sees you texting a girl when you're married and he's like, that ain't cool, bro. Like, that's a different type of friend, because a lot of friends would be like, what are you doing, man? Like, oh, I mean, is she hot? Like, no, when a guy goes, hey, dude, that ain't right. Knock it off. That's the type of male friends we need.
Yeah, it's knowing your goals, values, and standards, and then aligning with that and sticking to it.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know what arate is, or you haven't experienced it, every now and again, I think like once or twice a year, they'll have a different get together So they just had one in St. Louis. I had the opportunity to go to the one in Nashville. And when I went to the one in Nashville, I was struggling at that moment, with I'm pivoting. I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go, but I know I need to put myself in a room with other people that are like-minded and doing things that next level above, right? Like I'm reaching up, trying to find a place where I belong, where I can have conversations with people that know what I'm doing, they understand it, and they don't laugh it off as something that's a joke or that you can't do, or because people love to put their limitations on top of you. Well, I can't do that. I can't do that, so you can't do that.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling, if you're having a hard time, you need to, find a way to get to that next level. It starts by finding things like that, by putting yourself in that position to be in a men's group, to seek out things like Arate Live, where you can be in a room with 2,500 other people and get to listen to Robert Greene, Damon West, and all these other, Ed Milet, Andy Frisella, speak on life, entrepreneurship, business, overcoming your limitations, and just believing in yourself that you're here for a reason. You have excellence inside of you, and you can pull that out of yourself. But sometimes we need a little help, and we need a little collaboration to achieve that.
Absolutely. I think it's a requirement.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it alone.
Yeah, you absolutely can't.
You can't. Try. I mean, I've tried.
I'm in the middle of it. It's hard to find other people that are doing what I'm doing. I'm in Central Illinois. Nobody I know is doing this stuff, but I've had the opportunity to reach out to other people that are they're coaches online, via TikTok and Instagram. And so we've created a little bit of collaboration through that. And that's been an amazing experience because it leveled up my content. It leveled up my belief in myself and my abilities and what I'm producing. And now everything is starting to grow. A month ago, I had far fewer followers than what I have today on all platforms. And now they're all significantly growing and it's not stopping. And it's like, this is cool, but it's thanks to that collaboration.
Yes, absolutely. It's a requirement. God did not put us in this planet to be alone. And you're like, if you look at the clues, look at the facts, you're the most miserable alone. Like you're lonely. It's hard to succeed alone. But there also is this lone wolf narrative of America that's like the self-made generation. I don't need anybody. Men are raised to think that I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own.
Yeah, just up by the bootstraps, right?
Yep. And then if you ask for help, you're weak.
Well, so it's a great way to keep other people small with that thinking, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're just weak if you ask for help. Well, then you never do anything because you don't know how to do it.
Yeah, that's something I still struggle with to this day. Like instead of I have a hard time relying on people, so I just do everything on my own. But then I am miserable because I'm loading myself with 3 different businesses and hours of work that I can't even complete, and then it destroys my self-confidence. And then because I'm just trying to keep my head above water because I'm afraid to ask for help. And so like recently I brought on an exec to help me with a lot of things, and that's been tremendous for me because I'm working with another brother. I'm working with a guy who's after the same goals as me, and he's taking off some of my workload, which has just been exceptional for me.
God, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, but I brought him on because he was ambitious and he needed something. And then, I was able to because my coaching business is new. So, just revenue and stuff, we're getting things moving and we're doing really well now. But I didn't want to pay him a fat salary of $70K a year to be an exec. So I just brought him on at a low wage with a commission based and I make him grind, talking to people. And so then I have the ability to pay him endless amounts of money as long as he works hard.
Love that. That's awesome.
He can decide his own paycheck, whether he wants to make $2,000 a month or $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month. It's all about what he puts in.
Nathan, I want to thank you for being on the show and taking the time with us out of your busy schedule. What are some ways that people can reach out to you, but also connect with 33 Hours?
Yes, the best way to get a hold of me is on Instagram. That's my main platform. I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, but I spend 95% of my time on Instagram. So you can go to @NathanMansfield on Instagram. For 33 Hours, the link in bio I have there. There's an application. We are sold out for our upcoming class, but we will be releasing future dates. And so it has become highly commoditized, highly valuable. People are trying to get in because we only offer so little slots. So you can still go through an application, and we'll make sure and review it and give you consideration for the upcoming class after the next one. So that's definitely where you can find the application and a little bit more about me.
That's awesome. Well, Nathan, thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll do this again in the future.
Absolutely, brother. I'll shoot you my number on Instagram. We'll talk again.
All right, cool, man. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.